All right. So, just kind of going to recap the week that's been so far. The training block is not done yet, but the the two big kind of like speed sessions are done. So, it's a good time to kind of look back on how the week has gone so far. And then I've really just got one more big workout run this week, and then I'll recap the full week. But why I thought it's worth documenting right now is because I just did yesterday the 5 minute interval sessions, which for me has been a workout I'm starting to dread. It's just a tough workout, which again, they're supposed to be, right? If you wanted to do something easy, you wouldn't train for a marathon. But that one's been a tough one. Like middle distance has always been hard for me to find my paces at. So when I was in high school, I was a distance swimmer and I would swim the 500, the 200, and then the 200 and 400 free relays. And the 200 was always the tougher event for me because I could just never get the pacing right. It was too long to sprint, but it wasn't long enough to truly pace it. So I just never found I was just never a great 200 swimmer. Uh, 500 was always my stronger event. This kind of reminds me of that. So the 400-meter repeats, I feel like it's a little easier for me to kind of find where I'm supposed to be. It's hard. Like, don't get me wrong, the workout is hard. I mean, and to that extent, the 10 400s workout this week was actually the more painful session for me. But the reason I wanted to record this today is because the 5 minute intervals went really well. And now that doesn't mean it was perfect. So, what happened, to kind of just recap it, is it was a little breezier when I started going. Now, don't get me wrong, this is April in Wisconsin. By those standards, it was a really nice day. It was like upper 50s. And then I think at the time I went for my run, a little bit of a weather was moving in. The morning had been completely calm, like 10 miles an hour for winds, which in April in Wisconsin, you just don't get that. But of course, I didn't go then. I went in the afternoon, and it was upper 50s, and then I guess what weather people would call a light breeze. But for a runner or a biker, definitely noticeable. So I would say the gusts were probably 20 or under, which is still, in April in Wisconsin, you will take that. But the first 5 minute interval, I was running directly into the wind with no protection from it. So, like, I was running down a street and the wind was coming into my face down the street. So, there were no buildings to block it, no trees, no nothing. And there was slight elevation change on the first one. Now, these aren't excuses. This is context, right? So, that first 5 minute interval, I missed my time goal. So for the 5 minute intervals, I'm supposed to be between a 5:52 or a 6:08 because I have a range of goal time. So my goals are first and foremost PR. That's always the goal. Second, qualify for Boston, and then the stretch goal is break 3 hours. So my training plan is built around either Boston qualifying time of around 3:07, which should get me really close to being able to actually sign up because the qualifying standard for my age group is 3:10. But if you ran like a 3:09:50, even though you technically qualified, they release registrations based on your time. So if you beat your time by a wide margin, there's a very high chance you're going to get to actually register and run the race. If you just squeak by under the margin, there's a very good chance you won't be able to, even though you technically qualified. So the second time is a 3:07, which should give me some cushion, and then the stretch goal is 2:58. So I basically have two sets of paces, and which give me the range I'm trying to run in. So ideally, I'm trying to run everything on the fastest end of that spectrum because my thought process is if I train for the 2:58 and I have a great day, Then maybe 258 happens and I hit every single one of my goals. I drop the mic and walk off stage. But it gives me a little bit of cushion for if I don't have a great day and things don't go perfectly, because guess what? It's a marathon. I feel like nothing ever goes perfectly. Then I've got at least a little bit of cushion before I start running into trouble hitting the Boston qualifying standards. So that's the philosophy anyway. So all of that rambling to say, I'm still targeting the upper, like the faster end of my goal times. And the first of the 5-minute intervals, I was at a 6:09. But again, into the wind with some elevation change. Not ideal for that workout. But, I missed it by 1 second because, again, 5:52 to 6:08 is where I should be. So that was the first one. But the rest of them, I was, like, right on. And the reason this is noteworthy is because I think so far every single time I've done the 5-minute intervals, I've either stopped at some point during one of the intervals, so I've either like stopped in the middle and had to catch my breath, or I've taken additional rest. And I don't think I've taken additional rest because with the 5-minute intervals, you get 5 minutes of rest. Rest is not the problem. I think what's happened is I've kind of mentally quit because it is a really tough exercise. On some of the intervals, stopped, took a breath, got a drink. This time I didn't do that at all. No additional rest, no stops. So I went right from the 6:09 for that first one. Second one was 5:58. Third one, 5:52. Fourth one, 5:56. Fifth one, 5:55. And, by the end, I was definitely really tired. But I was able to push right up until the very end. And I mostly felt pretty good, like surprisingly good for that pace. Normally, if I'm running, 550s paces, I'm gasping by the time I'm done. I wasn't. So I feel like my fitness is improving. So I'm very encouraged by that. Now, again, it's one workout. The conditions from a temperature perspective were just about perfect. So it was overcast, upper 50s. For running, that's about as good as it gets, for me anyway. I tend to run a little hot, so if I'm running in like the 60s or 70s, I'm starting to get uncomfortably warm. Much colder than the 50s, you start getting chilly. I mean, I feel like I run fairly well in the 40s as long as it's not super windy or rainy. But 50s is like perfection. If you can get it, you're thrilled. So this workout was a big encouragement. And that was after I had kind of a rough day in general, personally, when I did the 400s this week, so my head was definitely not in the right place. But I did run it fairly well, so I think the 400s, I was still right around that 120 time. A lot of the 400s were 119s, and then I think the slowest one I had was maybe 126, which my goal should be 122 to 126, so 126 would again be that 307 goal time, 122 would be the 257 time. So that one went fairly well, but there was one set of that where right when I finished the 400, I sat down, and instead of like going directly into, because the way that workout is structured is it's 10 400s followed immediately by a 400, so 10 400s at that 122 to 126 pace. Immediately when you finish the 400, you jog another 400 to kind of cool down, and then you rest for 1 minute. So on one of those 400s, I literally, like, as soon as I was done running the 400, I sat down instead of going right into the 400 jog because I was gassed. I think that was more mental. And that's definitely the thing that I'm learning during this training program is the overwhelming majority of the time I'm stopping, it's just mental. Like, I'm tired for sure. It's hard, but I'm not stopping because I literally can't take another step. I'm stopping because it's getting hard and I'm giving up. And I'm definitely making strides in that regard, which is good. That's where you want to go. But it's also a lesson that I'm glad I'm learning, because I wonder how many times that's happened during marathons where, maybe I shut it down when I didn't necessarily have to. So this has been good. Like, no matter what, I mean, I'd love to. Like, I feel pretty confident about the way things are going right now. I'm very happy with the way training is progressing. And I think that certainly positions me to have a good marathon. But I've also done enough marathons and I've been around this sport long enough to know that it will humble you no matter how prepared you are. So you could go into a race having the absolute best training you've ever had, and something can go wrong on race day, whether it's just terrible weather, something goes wrong with your race kit, like your shoelaces break, you have stomach GI issues, you get a cold. There's so many things that can go wrong for a race of that magnitude that I think I'm over the hump of like getting cocky and thinking I've got it. Like I've been humbled more than enough times by this race distance to not get overconfident, but I do feel like the training at least is going well. And I'm learning some things that I think will make me a better runner just in the future, regardless of how this race goes. Learning some things that I definitely need to make sure are part of my any training plan going forward, which I definitely now have a better training program for any future marathons. So that is a huge win. So it's all looking very good right now. I'm very happy with it, and even apart from the race and like not getting ahead of myself and not getting cocky on that, I've also learned this lesson enough times just in training that I'm not going to get cocky for the remainder of the training program. Like, just because I had a good week this week and just because things have been going the way I want them to so far does not mean anything, right? I could literally go out on my recovery run this afternoon, step off a curb the wrong way and twist an ankle or pull a muscle, and it could completely derail my training program. So I'm not taking anything for granted right now, but I am very happy with where I am today. There's still some variables to be worked out. So I just bought a bunch of ingredients to make my own gels because, God love them, gel manufacturers. No hate heading your way from me. You've definitely gotten me through a good number of races, but as with everything, the cost just seems to keep going up and up and up. And man, like you hear running and you think, well, that's got to be a cheap sport. All you need is shoes. Okay. Yeah, kind of. I mean, it's certainly cheaper than some sports, but it doesn't mean there aren't costs that add up. And at some point, man, it's like, okay, you've got your race entry fees. You've got, the shoes you absolutely burn through. You've got smartwatches. You got heart rate monitors. You've got, you're probably eating better food, which is more expensive, frustratingly. You're what else? You got your gels you got to buy. You got hydration stuff. You got maybe a Camelback or some other, water bottle solution. Like, costs do add up, and man, gels have just got. I don't know if they were always this way and I just didn't notice, but the pricing seems to have gotten pretty aggressive. So if you're also training your nutrition the way you should be, you're cruising through gels. Man, that adds up over the course of a training program and then a marathon. So I found a recipe here on YouTube that I'm going to try out for making my own kind of gel substitute. So I'm going to try that and see how that works, because nutrition and GI issues are one thing I still definitely don't have fully under control. So those are variables that could really hurt me on race day if I'm not able to get them figured out. So that's kind of, right now I feel like my training is going well. I don't need to overthink any of that. So I will instead overthink nutrition and GI and hydration too. I think hydration, I'm in pretty good shape. I kind of know what I need there, but nutrition and GI are definitely two wild cards at the moment that could screw me up. So that's definitely the next focal point. Anyway, enough of that. Remaining runs this week, I still have my recovery run today, which I ran a little further than I was planning on yesterday. I ran about let's see, what did I do? 8.5 miles. I was planning on like 7.5. So I may do 5 today for recovery, maybe 6. We'll see how I feel. I'm not going to push the distance, though. 5 is plenty. Tomorrow, day off. I don't have to run at all. And then Sunday is another workout that I'm incredibly interested to see how it goes because it's my first long tempo run of this training program. So what it's supposed to be is 6 to 10 miles basically at my goal marathon pace. So again, if I'm shooting for sub 3, it should be about a 6:50 pace. If I'm shooting for 3:07, I think it was 7:08 or something like that. So that's going to be Sunday. Very curious to see how that one goes. I haven't done a run like that in a while. So it'll be interesting to see how we do. I haven't decided yet if I'm going to try to take some nutrition on board during that one. Maybe we'll ease my way into that. We'll see. But that's it. That's the week. And then I'll kind of recap it all on Monday. So later, skater.